Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. So it's the last day of 2019 and the last year of this decade. We're about to go into a new decade with 2020. I'm hoping for some awesome things, but until we get to that new year, I gotta put out one more video, and that is my spoiler review for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, which I have seen 2 more times since the press screening. Now, I had purposely delayed this spoiler review just like I did with The Last Jedi, because I wanted to take my mind off the movie for a while, and kind of stay away from social media after the incredibly toxic backlash of The Last Jedi 2 years ago. But really with this movie, the response just seems to be an overwhelming because I think everyone is in agreement that this really is not the best Star Wars movie out there. The complaints that people have about this movie are legit complaints about the way the story's structured, the pacing, the writing, just all the things that should be argued about when it comes to a movie, not here's what I wanted to see in a movie. And I had time to think about this movie, and in my original review I said that it's nowhere near among the worst of the Star Wars movies, but after I did my ranking and just seeing where The Rise of Skywalker lands, I'm like, it's definitely at the bottom. It's still above the Clone Wars, Phantom Menace, and Attack of the Clones, but honestly, it's probably neck and neck with the Phantom Menace for me. I actually didn't want to say anything before the movie was coming out, but when watching the trailers, I honestly didn't get that much joy from them. Part of it was because of the fan base, because I just was so sick and tired of people complaining about Star Wars that it was hard for me to get excited. But even then, the trailers itself, putting the fan base aside, didn't fill me with the same excitement that the trailers for The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and even Rogue One filled me with. And before I get into the elements that really irritated me about this movie, I want to talk about all the stuff that I liked, because I think there's a lot in this movie that can be enjoyed from a certain point of view. Palpatine. Ian McDiarmid still really nails this role, and I love Palpatine's introduction to this movie. He's like an undead zombie with white eyes, black lips, he's missing some fingers. It's a really legitimately creepy return to the puppet master of the entire saga. And I honestly have no problem with the idea of Palpatine returning, because he was the one that was basically the villain of the entire saga. It kind of would have been weird if he was absent throughout this series. But really, with what this movie does, I'm not going to get into the negatives just yet, but I feel like this would have been better off without Palpatine. He could have had a presence, but he physically did not need to have survived the events of Return of the Jedi. He could have stayed dead, but could have still been manipulating things from beyond the grave. His role honestly should have been what Luke Skywalker was in The Force Awakens, where he's not in it, but his presence is very much there, and he's kind of the driving force of the plot. But getting back to the main plot, I still like the chemistry between the 3 main characters, Rey, Finn, and Poe. The light speed skipping scene, where the Millennium Falcon is escaping those TIE fighters and is just jumping from planet to planet to get rid of them, that's really creative and something we've never seen with the Falcon before. The John Williams score is also still very good, although it's probably my least favorite of his Star Wars scores. I like the Rey and Kylo Ren connection, because this movie takes what was established in The Last Jedi with their Force connection to where they can actually have lightsaber duels from different locations. Rey will be on Kylo Ren's Star Destroyer, and Kylo Ren will be on the planet below, and they can still have a physical lightsaber duel. Certain objects can be taken from each of them and their locations. There's a lot of really cool stuff that they expand upon with their Force connection, and all the Rey and Kylo Ren scenes are, well, okay, not all of them, but most of them are very fun and probably one of the bigger highlights of the movie. And I really loved the last shot of the movie where Rey travels to Tatooine to the Lars homestead and looks out into the twin suns with BB-8. I'll get back to more details on the ending, but those are all the elements that I really liked about this movie. The rest of it, however, is a goddamn mess. It is an absolute disaster in terms of a script and storytelling. The movie literally opens up with Kylo Ren traveling to Mustafar to try to find a Sith Wayfinder that'll take him to the Sith homeworld Exegol, or at least I assume it's the Sith homeworld. That's where Palpatine is resting. And rather than killing Palpatine right there, he decides to do his bidding in exchange for an entire fleet of countless Imperial Star Destroyers, not First Order, but Imperial Star Destroyers, with planet-destroying cannons mounted to the bottom of them. And then immediately cuts to the lightspeed skipping scene, and then we go to our main three heroes going to another goddamn desert planet to try to find more clues about Palpatine's return. Like, I said that this movie, once it starts, it just never stops. And the best way I could describe the way this movie plays out, it's like you're playing a Star Wars video game, but all of the cutscenes are skippable right off the bat. And because you skipped all the cutscenes, you're immediately lost in what's going on, and you have no emotional attachment to anything. And in terms of this movie backtracking on stuff that The Last Jedi has done, I mean, it did expand the Rey and Kylo Ren connection, sure, but rewatching the movie, I'm like, no, this actually backtracks on a lot of stuff that The Last Jedi established. I'm just gonna get the big one right off the bat right now. In The Last Jedi, we were told that Rey is a nobody, and the entire theme of that movie is that greatness doesn't have to come from lineage, it can come from anywhere. And this movie goes, no, Rey is the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine. And rather than it being a massive, wow, that's actually pretty cool, like with Vader being Luke's father in Empire Strikes Back, or Kylo Ren killing Snoke in The Last Jedi so he can be the main villain, I watched this moment, and when that reveal came up, went, God damn it. Because really, like, it really does undo the biggest theme of The Last Jedi. In this movie, we get more backstory on who Rey's parents are. And in The Last Jedi, we were specifically told that they sold Rey for drinking money, and they didn't care about her. In this movie, Kylo Ren says, your parents sold you off to protect you from Palpatine. And Kylo Ren even says, I never lied to you about your parents. I'm like, you did, actually. You didn't tell them that they sold you off to protect you and that they actually loved you. You told them that they sold you for money to buy drinks and get drunk. And it goes into something that the prequels and even Return of the Jedi have just made a habit on that I'm getting sick of, having characters be connected to each other in some way. I'm fine with Luke and Leia being brother and sister. I'm fine with Kylo Ren being the son of Han Solo and Leia Organa. Darth Vader building C-3PO is dumb. Boba Fett being a clone of Jango Fett, whose DNA was used for the clone army, is dumb. Rey being a bloodline to the Emperor is stupid, and I'm not going to say it ruins her character, but it definitely devalues her. And the only reason I'm not going to say it ruins her character, because this movie tries to implement another method of creating your own legacy, which is your bloodline does not determine who you are. And that's one of the things that, as much as I hate that twist, and as much as I hate that decision overall, I can't get mad at it. It's dumb, and personally, I can't see how anyone can defend this decision, but it's not the worst thing in the world, honestly. For me, the bigger crime is giving Kylo Ren a redemption. I always thought that Kylo Ren should not have been redeemed. He killed Snoke, not because he turned to the light side, but so he could get rid of his competition and be the supreme leader, do ultimately what Darth Vader didn't do. And in this movie, when Palpatine and Kylo Ren meet, and Palpatine tells him, fulfill your destiny and become what Darth Vader couldn't be, I almost expected Kylo Ren to go, I'm already what Darth Vader couldn't be, and then just kill him right there. Which, by the way, how it should have ended. If you guys want any ideas on what to do for your Rise of Skywalker episode, you can take that as a free one. It's on me. But even in The Last Jedi, Leia says to Luke that her son is really gone before Luke says no one's ever really gone. So in that sense, Ben Solo truly is dead, but he is one with the Force. It's just his physical body is fully taken over by Kylo Ren. But in this movie, and I really wish I'd done this spoiler review sooner, Chris Terrio has come out and said that Leia using the Force from planets away to awaken the good side of her son, Ben Solo. It's one of those, you mean you could have done that the whole time moments, even after you admitted in the last movie that your son's gone, there's no hope of bringing him back? And then trying to say that her Force connection brings back an image of Han Solo, which I should mention right now, Harrison Ford does come back as Han Solo in a cameo. I think it's a fine one, but it's ruined by the fact that nobody told Harrison Ford to shave beforehand because he's got some stubble. So then Ben Solo basically throws away his crossguard lightsaber, and manages to take a TIE fighter in the wreckage of the second Death Star from 31 years ago and manages to still pilot it. That might be a nitpick, but this is one of those moments where there are just too many plot conveniences to the point where they don't even try. It's like, oh, this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And in terms of the other plot conveniences that I'll just get off the bat right now, Luke just happens to keep Leia's lightsaber on Ahch-To. Luke's X-Wing that was buried in the water for who knows how many years is lifted out of the water by the Force ghost of Luke Skywalker and is still perfectly functional, even though he took a piece off the X-Wing to make his cabin door in The Last Jedi. Rey manages to find a dagger with Sith writing on it that has a little compass that shows the exact location of a Sith wayfinder in the second Death Star, and this weird little compass that comes out of the dagger manages to match the wreckage of the Death Star perfectly. I'm like, come on! Like, this script doesn't even try, and given that it's Chris Terrio, I am really starting to think that Ben Affleck ghost wrote Argo. Either that or Chris Terrio just got lucky with that movie, because between Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, and now The Rise of Skywalker, he is really starting to become one of my least favorite screenwriters in Hollywood. And I want to take this moment to kind of apologize to Colin Trevorrow, because I'm not a fan of Colin Trevorrow's writing either, but at the very least, his writing has that B-movie quality to it. I don't think it's suited for Star Wars, but he manages to make those Jurassic World movies kind of fun in spots. No matter how stupid Fallen Kingdom got, it's honestly nowhere near as stupid as this movie. Now let's get back to the other characters. Finn in this movie doesn't really have anything to do. When he meets the character of Jenna, it's revealed that she was a former stormtrooper in the First Order who defected because it was the right thing to do, similar to Finn. So I'm watching this and going, okay, this is something that could really lend itself to Finn and his story, because in The Force Awakens, in the first half of The Last Jedi, he's trying to run away and not be a part of the fight. Then in The Last Jedi, he is a full-on resistance fighter and is willing to almost die to defeat the First Order. So in this movie, we see that there are more stormtroopers out there who defected because it was the right thing to do. That could have been a great moment, and especially considering the idea that Luke's sacrifice on Crate inspired the entire galaxy to stand up against the First Order. But no, this doesn't go anywhere, and Finn really just spends most of this movie running towards Rey and trying to make sure she's okay, which has been a criticism that people had of the other two movies, but I never saw it that way. Here's the point where I'm like, okay, now I see what people are talking about. Poe Dameron doesn't really have a whole lot to do anyway. We get a little more backstory with him and find out that he was once a smuggler with Keri Russell's character, Zori Bliss, and I think there's a lot of potential with that dynamic, but again, doesn't really go anywhere. And then when it comes to Rose, they did her dirty. I was one of the biggest defenders of Rose and Kelly Marie Tran in The Last Jedi, because I didn't think she was bad in the movie, and I didn't think Rose was a bad character. But all of the negative backlash that people had towards this character was just disgusting. I can get people saying that she's not a well-written or interesting character. I get that. But to actually attack the actress because you're a racist, like, screw off. Like, no other way to put that, but screw off. Which is why when it came to the Episode 9 panel at Star Wars Celebration, and hearing Kelly Marie Tran get the biggest applause out of everyone at that panel, that made me happy, because that's what the fandom is about, celebrating what you love. And then to see her in this movie get totally sidelined and have less than 2 minutes of screen time it's a tragedy, because it really shows to me that Disney and J.J. Abrams caved in to toxic fandom, and they pretty much Jar Jar Binks'd her. Except this time Rose didn't do anything. At least Jar Jar Binks in Attack of the Clones was responsible for giving Palpatine emergency powers to basically begin the Clone Wars and his rise to power. I still think Attack of the Clones is a worse movie, but I have more respect for that movie. And then as for some other characters, Lando doesn't have any reason to be in this movie at all. It's great to see Billy Dee Williams back in this role, and he's still got it, but Lando didn't really do anything in this movie. The new droid, D.O., nobody has talked about this droid, and for good reason. He's one of the most pointless creature/droid creations ever. And again, there's an interesting idea with D.O. where he's this droid that's been abandoned and has trust issues. When Rey tries to say hi to D.O. and pet him, he backs up and says, no thank you, because you can tell that this droid is truly traumatized. And again, there's a lot you could do with that. No, we're not going to focus on that. The Knights of Ren, no reason at all. They are pointless. They are the most useless band of, I guess, minions, I should say, that have ever existed. I get them not being in The Last Jedi because they had no place in that story. And there could be the argument that Snoke didn't allow Kylo Ren to have the Knights of Ren. But now that Kylo Ren is Supreme Leader, he could bring in the Knights of Ren and things are run his way. But that just doesn't really work out in the end. And I guess I should talk about the end anyway. Palpatine and Rey duke it out, and Rey dies in this big explosion that happens because she kills the Emperor, but Ben Solo survives. And in this movie and The Mandalorian, they establish a new Force power where you can heal somebody using the Force and just touching them. And I have no problem with that. Every piece of Star Wars media has developed new Force powers, because the Force is really full of endless possibilities, and this is a more Jedi way of using the Force. Not using it for attack, but using it to heal people. So Rey's dead, but Ben Solo uses that power to bring her back to life. And then they kiss, which I hate because it feeds into those stupid Reylo theories, which I've never been a fan of since day one. And then Ben Solo just dies. At a point where this is supposed to be a traumatic and sad moment, my theater, when I saw this a second time, was laughing at it because it honestly was goofy and unearned. Ben Solo's entire redemption was unearned in my opinion. So all the Star Destroyers are, well, destroyed. The Resistance wins, the First Order is defeated, the war is over, and Rey heads to Tatooine where she buries Luke and Leia's lightsaber at the Lars homestead. And then there's this old woman that approaches the homestead and asks Rey who she is, and Rey gives her a name, and then the old lady says, Rey who? Then Rey looks off in the distance and sees the Force ghosts of Luke and Leia and says, Rey Skywalker. So I do kind of like that idea that while Rey is connected to Palpatine, the family name she chooses to go by is Rey Skywalker. I kind of like it, but I still prefer when Rey was a nobody. That aspect of her character just makes her more powerful and more special to me. So I honestly don't have much else to say about this movie. It's a massive letdown. It's good in spots like with Godzilla King of the Monsters, where I can like this movie for the most bare-bones reason possible, but if we're actually looking at this from a script and storytelling perspective, it's bad. It's a mess, and if I were to rank all the Star Wars movies, it would be like this. From worst to best: Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace, The Rise of Skywalker, Solo, Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, Return of the Jedi, A New Hope, and Empire Strikes Back. So I have no real hatred for this movie at all. I'm disappointed, but I'm not going to spend 2 years on the internet hating this movie because it's just a movie in the end. Sure, it's disappointing, and I would have loved to see this be a great Star Wars movie or just a great movie in general, but hey, life goes on. I still have friends to see, I still have bills to pay, I still have a job to go to, and with that disappointment, am I giving up on Star Wars? No, not at all. I still love Star Wars. There are just some movies and media out there that I'm not a fan of, like Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Rise of Skywalker. I'm not a fan of the second half of Rebels or Star Wars Resistance, but there's so much more that I really like about Star Wars, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. Whether it be actually going on Rise of the Resistance myself when it opens at Disneyland, seeing more of The Mandalorian, being able to play Jedi Fallen Order, and just seeing what else this franchise has to offer. I'm excited for the rest of the series going forward in different types of media, and this one movie, while disappointing, it's not going to turn me off from Star Wars. I'm still a fan, it's just I choose to focus on the stuff that I do like rather than the stuff that I don't. And there you go, that's my spoiler review for The Rise of Skywalker. If there's anything in this movie that I didn't touch upon, just let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to voice my opinions via a comment. But now I want to know what you guys think about The Rise of Skywalker spoilers. Do you like the movie overall? Do you dislike it? What is your opinion on Rey being a Palpatine? What's your opinion on Ben Solo being redeemed. What's your opinion on this movie when it comes to The Last Jedi, and if it actually retconned the movie in your opinion? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, leave a comment, support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one. May the Force be with you.